My name is Satyam Vyas. I'm the founder and CEO of Climate Asia. Just to give everyone an introduction about Climate Asia is a not-for-profit dedicated to strengthening the climate ecosystem in Asia through the capacity building of organizations focusing on human resource, organizational development, and thought leadership. Climate change will cause a massive shift in the fundamental functioning of several industries, as we already know. Climate Asia is a new initiative bridging the gap by working with direct and indirect climate actors and organizations across the spectrum in various sectors. We will be accomplishing our mission by building a movement to inspire people to work in the climate ecosystem, a digital platform to find climate jobs, climate funding, events and news and thought leadership in the forms of convening conferences, panel discussions, and dialogue building. Climate Asia endeavors to create conversations around three pillars: share, empower, and connect, by increasing awareness, upskilling the ecosystem, and catalyzing networking among players within and outside the industry. We have launched the Conversation of Change, a video interview series centered around one of the most pertinent crises of our time, climate change. Conversations of Change attempt to synthesize perspectives around climate action, skills, talent, and journey of various climate leaders and their role in the climate ecosystem. I'm super excited today to welcome Adam Werbach as our speaker for the Conversation of Change series. Just a quick background about Adam. Adam is the global lead sustainable shopping at Amazon. He's a sustainability leader working at the intersection of technology, business, and politics. He's currently focused on developing a sustainable shopping customer experience and product assortment as the global lead for customer and employee impact at Amazon.com. After a YGL journey, he founded Trove, the re-commerce company that manages resale for incredible brands like Patagonia, Ellen Fisher, REI. He previously founded Act Now, which was acquired by Saatchi & Saatchi and the Publicis Group. After that, he helped Walmart launch his sustainability efforts. After doing all these incredible things at the age of 23, Werbach was elected president of the Sierra Club, the oldest and the largest grassroots environmental organization in the US. After helping pass the legislation to create Death Valley and Joshua Tree National Parks in California. He spent almost 10 years producing an indie rock documentary film entitled This Is Noise Pop, which was named one of the top 5 documentaries of the year by Rolling Stone magazine, even though it was only shown once. Werbach lives between San Francisco and Bolinas, California, with his wife Lynn and 3 beautiful kids, Mila, Pearl, and Simon. We are extremely honored to have you with us, Adam. Thank you so much for giving us your valuable time and speaking to me today.
Really happy to be with you.
Great. I'll jump right at it, Adam. I'm super excited to learn more about the work you are doing at Amazon and what is your role as the global lead for sustainable shopping looks like.
Sure. Well, first of all, let me just thank you for putting together this session and really for the work of Climate Asia. Right now, the biggest need we have to fight the climate challenge is talent, is more people who have talent and passion to get into the field and start working in it. So I'm very aligned with your mission and excited to support the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
So to start and tell you a bit about the work I do now. So I work for Amazon. I'm based in the United States, and I have a global role of thinking about what is impact and how customers and employees can make a greater impact when they shop or use services from Amazon.com. Now, retail in some ways has been seen as only of a very negative effect on our climate and environmental challenges because it uses resources and it takes resources to make those things, to produce the items, to get them to people, to package those items when those items are used. And Amazon has had taken a very strong position that we should be leaders in the climate movement and not merely folks who are sort of in the middle of the pack. Amazon took a challenge called the Climate Pledge, which committed to get to Amazon to net zero by 2040, 10 years ahead of the Paris Agreement. And as part of that, we've been trying to change our transportation system, for example, buying 100,000 electric vehicles, a goal of 10,000 electric vehicles in India, lowering our packaging use. For example, in India, there's no more single-use plastic, as well as working with lots of other companies around the world. And there's now over 300 companies who've made a similar commitment to the Climate Pledge to begin to reduce their emissions as well. But we understand that it's not just our operations that we have to work on. We actually have to work on the products that we sell and the opportunities for our customers and our employees to actually do something to make an impact. So what we've done in sustainable shopping is to grow the selection of more sustainable products that are sold across Amazon. Today, we have about 300,000 products that we've identified globally that are what we call climate pledge friendly, that if customers buy them, they'll have less of an impact on climate and other associated environmental issues. They're certified products. So one thing that people can do is just look for more sustainable products that are available on Amazon. But the broader question is, how do we help people live a more sustainable lifestyle? How do we give them the choices and options to do that? And that's really the work over the next decade, candidly, to think about like how do we change that? How do we think about things about using things over and over again, as opposed to using them and throwing them away? How do you think about refilling items rather than just throwing away the package once it's used once? How do we think about transportation so that we don't need to fly anything anywhere? We can actually use lower carbon travel. So all of those things can be really driven by customer choices, by choices that customers do when they come into the store, open an app, and try to do it. So what we're trying to do is package those options up, listen to customers a lot, and help them make good choices for the environment.
This sounds incredible, Adam. I mean, just the way you describe the entire, I would say the ecosystem of like looking at it from a behavior perspective to the experience of people, to looking at your own supply chain and the operations, and getting more and more companies to sign up, looking at what Amazon is leading the way, if I may put it like that. Adam, you have like 28 years of experience where you have worked as a lifelong sustainability advocate at the intersection of technology, business, and politics. How do you describe your own career journey in this space? And what are the key learnings you would like to share with our audience?
Well, I'm very lucky to have spent a career in something that I love. And I wish that upon everyone who is here, as obviously that's what you're doing right now, Satyam, and hopefully everyone who's listening can find a place where they can find their passion and connect it to the work that they do, because it's a lucky thing if you can work that out. So from a very young age, I learned that by being active in environmental protection, I could feel like I was connecting the things that I care about to the work that I was doing. And I could have successes, even though I was too young or didn't have the right skills. I could actually make a difference on something that I cared very passionately about. So my first piece of advice is find something that you're passionate about and match it to a skill that you're passionate about. So, because you're watching today, I assume that the people who are here care about climate, and we need you to, because climate is not something that's going to get solved by Amazon or any single company or any single entity. This is something that we all need to work on. So you have the issue that you care about, and it's pretty big. There's many different entrance points to working on climate. It touches every piece of our economy, every piece of our society, and pretty much every piece of our culture now. So you have the issue. Now the question is, what are you good at doing? Like, what is the thing that makes you really passionate? If you're in school, what are you studying that you think is really interesting to you? If you're not in school and you're in your career, what are the things that really enliven you when you work? Start from there and ask the question of, can you actually be best in the world on those things? Can you actually get really deep into that skill and then match it to your passion issue? Now, 30 years ago, there was only a few different things you could do on something like climate change. There was legislation, and there was pretty much some engineering that you could work in oil and gas or the emerging renewable energy industry. Today, you can do anything you want in whatever economic sector, whether it be retail or media or finance, engineering, computer science, you name it, there's an option for climate change to work there. So the thing that's important to do is not just to say, look, I want to work in climate change. It's to actually really know what skill you want to employ against that and to be really good at that. The climate change movement doesn't just need sort of generalists who kind of care. It needs people with specific skills that can actually put to work. So I'd ask the question, what is the specific skill that you want to develop so that you can offer that to the climate change movement and find employment accordingly?
That's an incredible point, Adam, thank you for talking about it, not just finding your passion and purpose, but also marrying it to a skill. And you actually symbolizes that to an epitome, to the best level I have personally seen, because of the fact, the kind of career you have got in the sustainability space. Adam, when it comes to your expertise area of work, like sustainable shopping, customer experience, product assortment for customers, employee impact, how do you attract talent, and what are the essential skill sets required to work in an area like this?
Well, just to step back a little bit into my skill set, I graduated with what was called a modern culture and media degree in political science out of college. So I didn't actually have any of these particular skills. I had to go develop them. And what I was doing was looking for where was the place I could make the greatest impact and how can I apply those skills to that opportunity. So early on, I was involved in the NGO, the nonprofit community, an organization called the Sierra Club. And at a very young age, I became the president of an organization that had a $50 million budget and 500,000 members. And I didn't really have the skills of NGO management, but I did know some things. I knew how to work the media. So I was able to get lots of publicity and to do lots of engagement through television, emerging internet opportunities, et cetera, to grow the membership size of the organization. Again, I wasn't a nonprofit administrator, but I took the skills and things that I knew how to do, and I applied them to the problem that I had. Later on, when I worked on legislation, I knew how to do student organizing because in high school, I'd become a student organizer. I knew how to get students organized. So I found the members of Congress, the senators who needed to get changed, and I organized students in their area, and they helped to push the senators to change their votes. So again, I found the skills that I knew how to do, the things that I enjoyed, and actually use them. Later on, I started working in media and making films and television shows in the environment. And again, it's something that gave me great joy, but I used that as a way to raise awareness and to get companies to start to begin to change because I could share with them what was at stake in climate change and began to show it. So again, I was sort of marrying my passion for the thing that I cared about in climate change and the environment to the skills that I had. And you mentioned a project I worked on called a feature film called This Is Noise Pop, an indie rock film. That actually had nothing to do with climate. I just love making films. So I was able to make a film, and it took me 10 years because I was working my day jobs all that time and working on the environment, but I kept on making films at night because I wanted to. And I think that's the thing to try to find those areas of passion and really push them. Now, how that actually became sustainable shopping was, I got introduced through retail, through working with lots of different companies, some of the biggest retailers, as well as companies who were trying to sell their products. And what I was trying to learn was how do we actually get people to choose a car like a Toyota Prius, or to invest in wind energy, or to buy more organic products. And what I was doing is I took sort of the media knowledge that I had and started to translate that into behavior change. So again, it was sort of a very close switch for me to understand, okay, these are ways I would take people to get people to vote for something. And now I need to use those same skills to get people to buy something, to vote with their dollars, with their rupees as they actually go into the store. So the reason I give you that suggestion is that, my skill set has evolved. I've always loved to learn new skills, but I found basically adjacent areas and then gone into them because they were interesting to me, and then built and really worked hard to build lots of expertise in them. So when I say I work on employee engagement, I want to be really deep in that field and really know who the best and the brightest are in them, and how can I learn from them and bring those learnings to what I know and what I have to go do.
Oh, great, Adam. I mean, what I'm hearing is a lot of critical skills around problem solving, around the context of where you are operating, understanding human behavior and people, because you can just say that in passing it, hey, I organize a group, I influence the senators, I worked with the Congress. But I think what you're really trying to also communicate is that you can influence change. You can get people to work towards something. Now, whether it's a product or a platform or a campaign, it's someone like you who can actually act as a catalyst and get everyone to work towards a common agenda, which is an incredible skill set if you really start thinking about it, because you have through and through applied it in your life, like at different stages and different avatars. With that, I would like to ask Adam, what kind of advice would you like to give to people like senior and mid-level professionals who would like to transition into the climate and the sustainability space, and as well as students who might be aspiring to work in this space?
Well, the first thing is, I'll say it again, we need you. The climate space needs your effort and time. And there are lots and lots of roles, as opposed to, again, 20 years ago where there were very few, there are lots and lots of roles. And there are two different types of roles. One role is someone who's called the climate manager, the head of the climate program, the head of sustainability. And there are some of those. The other ones are very mainline jobs within companies where climate is a part of the responsibility, where we're responding to climate change, we're thinking about the future, we're building new businesses that respond to the challenges of a limited supply of resources on the earth is core to the job. And I would really encourage you to think about those roles as well, not just the ones that have climate in the title, because the climate in the title roles they're actually very, very competitive to get. Sometimes people tend to look for people who have lots and lots of years of experience. And they're not necessarily the most important job in the company that's working on it. The most important job is probably the job that's closest to the business engine of the company. Like, what does the company need to do to be successful? Does it sell things? Great, we'll be around sales or product manufacturer or innovation. Is it a media company? Great, we'll be around the behavior change and media creation, et cetera. Is it a computer science? Is it an engineering company? Great, be around the technology and how it gets created. And bring with you that strong climate understanding and belief. The most important climate activists I know do not have climate in their title. They're not called the head of sustainability. They're people who are actually pushing a climate agenda within the core business engine of the company. So when you're going out, I would absolutely look at other jobs that don't have climate in their title, but just to be very clear on, can I work on this issue that's very important to me here? How does this company respond to climate change, and how does that connect to this role? Because what we need is more, we've heard about entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, people working in companies to make change, who aren't necessarily the green person, who are not necessarily the climate person. There's someone who's bringing that to their current job.
That's an incredible advice, Adam. Also, like the fact that you need to be closer to the engine of the organization or the heart of the organization. Like I like the way you have framed it in terms of working for the business versus working for the technology, and being closer to, I would say, the would you call it, where the decisions are made kind of scenario.
Yeah.
With that, Adam, a talk that discussed the sharing economy at Stanford University in 2020 explored the shared ideas of sustainability and well-being, including the philosophy of Trove, a leading brand resale technology platform you co-founded. In this model, the concept of community moves between analogical and digital in a complementary and fluid way. What new has Trove observed in the context of cultural, economic transformation and collective human behavior, Adam?
That's a beautiful question. We're at this wonderful moment of bringing together culture and technology. And frequently, as technology grows, it doesn't take culture into account. I'm an enormous fan of Indian culture. And what I'll suggest to you is that India has many of the cultural lessons and learnings already existing in the culture. And our challenge now is to figure out how to reinforce them in India, but also to bring them to the rest of the world. In India, people don't waste items. They're not thrown away in the same way. They're always passed on to someone else. In India, public transportation is still widely used. In India, there are lots of cultural learnings about saving resources. Now, our challenge is to think about, how do we take those learnings and make them technological? So I was actually in Dharavi in Mumbai and looked at saving circles that were being organized there by Slum Dwellers International, that was looking at basically how people would share a wedding set or extra blue jeans, et cetera. And the idea was to actually bring some of those same lessons back to the United States when we started Trove. This is that place of, how do you take a good cultural skill that's very obvious, that can be handled by humans, and have technology empower that. Now, we see that in some places right now. So for example, if you go on to Amazon, you can buy used products through Amazon Renew. And the idea is to make it just as easy to buy a used product as it is to buy a new product. So you can trust that it works. You can trust that it looks good. You can trust that it's something that works for you, ultimately. Now, that's just like, previously passing things on hand to hand. What we want to try to get to is what we call at Amazon hands off the wheel, where people begin to do these behaviors just because the systems are built for people to reuse or to refill or reduce their amount of packaging. And the culture is reinforced by the technology as opposed to being supplanted by the technology. Instead of the technology becoming the culture, the things that are already extant in the culture actually get out through technological advances. For example, retailers selling used items, not just new ones.
I mean, I love the philosophy, Adam. I would love to see this happening at scale. And also probably for shoppers to actually go and look at choices you are making, where you might be reusing the product and passing it on again and again in a circular economy. And I think that that's what the world needs to do. And now, whether we look at it from a cultural perspective or from a sustainability perspective, but probably circular is the way forward for the planet to grow. Coming to I've been waiting to ask this question. Like, This Is Noise Pop, an indie rock documentary film, filmed and directed by you, was named one of the top 5 music documentaries of the year by Rolling Stone magazine, even though it was only shown once. So I'm very curious. This film took 10 years in the making and explored the nature of independent art with bands. I would love if you can describe your journey in balancing your passion as a filmmaker and an environmental activist at that point in time.
Well, you're sweet to raise this, because it's one that doesn't fit really well into any resume or biography of me, because I am an environmental climate activist. I've been that my entire life. And I made a feature film about indie rock. Now, independent rock and roll is a particular cultural movement of bands, really began in the late 1990s. Bands like Pavement and Modest Mouse and Death Cab for Cutie, these bands that are relatively obscure, but really had their moment in celebrating themselves as having this art aesthetic that wasn't commercial. In fact, when they got popular, they sort of dropped out of the movement. It was only for bands that were kind of obscure. And I was a fan of this music style, and I loved making films. So I just started going backstage, bringing cameras, and started filming, and getting friends to help me film as well. And we spent all this time, and it was an interesting project because it was completely not commercial for us. It wasn't commercial for the bands either. And in fact, the idea of actually making it was as important to us as showing it. So we spent all this time making it. We had hundreds and hundreds of hours of concert footage, and we spent 2 years editing it, and then held a big showing at one of the independent theaters in San Francisco, and that was it. Like that was our entire aspiration for the project. It was an art project, not a commercial project. And as I said, it's sort of a strange thing to talk about in the context of environmentalism, because there was no environmental method to it. What it was is something that fed my soul. It helped me get better at certain skills in filmmaking that I definitely used in my career later. But ultimately, it was just something that I really enjoyed doing. And what I would definitely recommend to anyone here who is working towards a mission, like working on climate, and is working towards building their skill set towards that, is to also find something that's outside of that area. Because there is a quote by Father Thomas Merton that activists suffer from overwork and burnout. And it's something I think about a lot, that some people who really want to make a difference tend to become really dour, sad people, and who don't actually enjoy life because they're so scared about what they know about climate, and so scared about what's at stake. So into that context, you have to find something that brings you joy, something that you can do that isn't necessarily all very practical, but some way to expand yourself and grow. And I'd encourage everyone to find a project sort of like that in the background you're just doing, and it doesn't need to be done in a certain time. If it doesn't get the work that you want to get done this week, it doesn't happen, that's okay. If it doesn't make you $1 million, that's okay too. It's just something that you do because you have passion for it.
No, that's a great advice, Adam. Do something you're passionate about, do something that brings you joy. If your work is deep and intense and meaningful, but does not bring joy, do something on the side that brings you joy. So great. With that, Adam, so again, one of the, from filmmaking now, I'm actually just blown out of mind thinking about at the age of 23, you were elected as the president of the Sierra Club, the oldest and the largest grassroots environmental organization in the United States. In 1997, you authored a book titled Act Now, Apologize Later, where innovative insights into environmental philosophy and activism that are true improvements over the old antiquated notions are highlighted. And later in 2004, your speech questioned the environmental movement and its possible death. How have your notions and beliefs changed over the course of almost 2 decades now, Adam?
Well, I think I'm much more optimistic than I was. It's having worked in this a long time, I've been surrounded by bad information for a very long time. I actually met Al Gore when I was 13 years old, and he told me about climate change, and it's really scared me. And it was around that time that I made a commitment to work on my life on it. And the difference between where we were, 30 years ago to today is that 30 years ago, we knew where we were heading and we had no idea how we were going to stop it. Whereas today we know where we're heading and we are stopping it. We're changing. We're on the path. I'm incredibly optimistic about what's happening. Now, I'm deeply saddened by the actual realities and the suffering that is happening that we could have avoided if we had taken action 30 years ago. But now we actually know, we can see the peaks. We can see how those peaks are going to change. We can see that another 30 years from now, we will be climbing ourselves out of this hole. We can see the technology moving forward that will allow us to pull carbon from the atmosphere, that will allow us to switch to clean energy. And most excitedly, we can see the people coming. That this is no longer an obscure group of bandits. This is very mainstream. And the people who hopefully are watching this video and will come and join this movement, this is a chance to win, to run across the goal line, to make the final goal, and to actually turn this around. And it'll happen in our lifetimes that we will make that switch. Again, 20, 30 years ago, we didn't know that. We had hoped, but it wasn't looking good. Now I'm incredibly optimistic and know that regardless of what we do, it's going to change. It is changing.
I'm so happy to hear this, Adam. It's probably the most positive thing I've heard in 2022, which is we have the resources and we have the technology. And like you said, it's now getting mainstream, which was not the case when you started out as an environmentalist, when you said you're 13-year-old and like decades ago, probably the era of the fossil fuel, if you might call it. Like, that's the time everyone was getting into fossil fuel because that was the next big thing. Now we're realizing what fossil fuels have done to our life and how we need to change that. Again, Adam, as someone who leads the corporate world to help keep environmentalism at its core of the belief system, do you believe the traditional notion of work-life balance? How do you disconnect and prioritize relaxation?
Oh, well, I have kids, and kids are a wonderful reminder to unplug and to be present with them. As I mentioned earlier, it's to work in something as serious as climate, you need to unplug. And I can't tell you how many friends I've had who have really burnt out and had terrible health responses or stress responses to the gravity of the work. And the only way to survive it is to find something that allows you to unplug and to survive. This is a marathon. I just said, I was very excited that it's only 30 years away till we actually totally turn the corner and start heading. And that I can look at. I can see 30 years from now, and I want to be there, and I want to be alive and healthy in order to work on that. So we need people to think about this as a long race, and to do extraordinarily work, but also to keep that to a certain number of hours so that we can have them for the next day, the next week, and the next decade.
Thank you so much, Adam. It has been an incredible pleasure to talk to you and learn about your journey, what you are passionate about, and your recommendation for people who are watching this and the career paths they need to take. I think few things that resonated a lot with me was like finding your passion and purpose, marrying it with a skill. I think throughout your career, you have been able to act as a catalyst for social transformation without necessarily putting it in so many words. And you led movements. Now those movements have taken you from like starting your own companies to right now working for the largest group like Amazon and bringing the sustainability agenda to the core of everything at Amazon. So we are very, very privileged to have you with us at Climate Asia. Thank you so much for giving your time today. And we look forward to a journey where we can be guided by someone like you to help us build a movement where we can bring millions of people to work in the climate space. As you said, it is mainstream now, and it is high time that we have people working in this space.